Okay guys, welcome back to another video. Now in this video I'm going to talk about my journaling practice and what I do to journal, what's my kind of ambition, my aim with it, and like how to get started in journaling if you're new to it. So I think one thing that I've found with journaling is a lot of it, for most of the time I've tried to do it, I found it very frustrating. And it sort of annoyed me because a lot of people seem to do it quite naturally. Like, they'll just open up a book and just journal their thoughts and they'll just know what to do and they'll get what they want out of it. And I guess maybe because, I don't know, I overthink a lot or I don't quite know what I'm meant to get out of it or whatever. But I've always found it very difficult to journal. Like when I started journaling about a year ago, I found it fun, I found it interesting, but I didn't quite get what I wanted out of it. And like with a lot of things, I kind of stopped it for a bit and then I picked it up again. But generally I found it very frustrating, very unfulfilling. I just didn't really do it. And it all changed when I went away with family, like went on holidays together, and I just had loads of free time just to journal because I wasn't really doing very much. And I went into like a trance-like state while journaling, like for the first time in my life. I was able just to sit there and just write, and so much just started coming down onto the paper, and I started to kind of get it, you know what I mean? Like, it just made sense to me all of a sudden. And that's probably the first thing that I would say about, well, actually the first two things I would say about journaling generally. One is that it just takes time to build any habit, and I've had the same thing with meditation that I have with journaling. Like, some things aren't an overnight victory, like when I went to the gym, I started going to the gym again. That was effectively like an overnight victory. I just decided that I was going to start going again consistently, and end of story. Like I went. But with these other sort of self-improvement habits like journaling and meditation, stuff like that, it's taken me a bit more time, and I think part of that is because you have to set this up. You have to build it up for quite a long time before you get into a groove with it. But I think, well, if you realise that that's part of the process, you kind of at peace with it much more. If I do have like a bad journaling session or a meditation session, and I think, oh, this is bullshit, I'm not going to do it for a while, I just realised that this is a normal emotion to feel about, a new habit that I'm trying to learn. And, I'm not saying it's good to give up a habit every time you get pissed off about it, but I think even if, like, worst case scenario, I don't do it for a few days or a week or however long, when I do come back to it, even though it feels like I'm back on square one again, I've actually got all that experience from before that I can now apply. And I said this, like with the gym, obviously I said when I started, doing self-improvement habits, just overnight I decided to start going to the gym again. But to be fair, I'd gone to the gym before that, at school. I'd done a bit like on my gap year, like I had some experience in the gym that meant that it wasn't totally like a day one kind of thing. Well, with journaling and meditation, it very much was like a day one kind of thing, if that makes sense. So anyway, so the first thing I'll say is just don't be discouraged if you don't see results early on, or don't be discouraged if you literally you just completely throw your hands up in the air and you think this is bullshit, this doesn't work. That's normal, it's part of the process. And the second thing I'd say is just, this helps in my scenario, is if you're new to journaling, a great place to start is just somewhere far away from your home, really like as far away as possible. So when I got back from that holiday, where I'd sort of journaled a lot, I got back home, and I think I sat down at the kitchen table again. This was in the summer, like I didn't have a job yet, so I was kind of had a lot of free time on me. And I just sat down in the kitchen and I started journaling, and it just wasn't the same. It wasn't the same, and I concluded that it was because I was in a home environment. So I think there's something about being taken to another place where your brain's more open-minded. You know, it's not using the same thought patterns that it does at home, because it's in a new environment. And so what I did in the end was I'd just go out of the house, go to a nearby cafe or pub, or sometimes just sit on a park bench and just write and journal there. And I found that I got a little bit of results doing that. But interestingly, still not as good as that holiday. I think there is something about being on holiday, or just in a completely new environment. It just completely sort of gets rid of so many thought processes that you're used to having. So that's really my first recommendation. My first recommendation is try journaling in different places. And I'm just going to talk a bit about like kind of why I journal and how I go about it. So the realization I had when I was journaling on holiday was that it is really as simple as just writing down what you think. And that might sound so silly and so obvious, but I think the most effective kind of journaling, or at least among the most effective journaling that you can do, is just sitting down with a pad of paper and almost like meditating, basically. Like when you think a thought, write that thought down, and don't try and do anything clever with it, but just sit there with a pad of paper. If you're thinking about something, write about it, but then if you start thinking about something else, write about that, and really try not to have any judgment about what you're writing or whether it's helpful for you to write it or not. That's the one thing. And what you want to do, basically, what I see the aim of this kind of journaling is to really just get a picture of your mind. Like, what are you thinking of? And I relate it a bit to, like, I don't know, just drawing a picture, drawing a view. You're just drawing your mind, basically, what's inside your mind. You're not trying to sort of get a particular answer. You're not trying to, I don't know, write certain things that are interesting or clever or whatever. You just want to write everything as it is, and it will just give you a sort of peace of mind that journaling is so like what people seek from journaling. The other thing I'll say is, when you're journaling, try to focus on asking the question why. So often I'll get stumped on a certain thing that I'm writing about, and I'll just sit there and just ask why, and I'll sort of write it with little arrows, and then I'll say it in capital letters, why. So just trying to give an example, like, let's say I'm journaling a lot, and then I write as a sort of bullet point, like, I want to travel to this country, and just ask why, and just sit with that why for a moment, and you don't actually have to come up with an answer. That's the beautiful thing, because if you, like, the thing is, guys, like, the brain is a goal-seeking mechanism. So if you just ask it the right questions, it will, even if you don't feel like you're doing it on the surface, you will seek those answers. And so you're asking why a lot. Often you can be journaling a bunch of stuff and you'll start thinking, why do I actually want this in the first place? Why? And the habit of literally writing out just the word why, even if you don't have anything to write afterwards, is extremely powerful because you can come back to journaling about that later on down the line, and then you can be like, oh, because this, and suddenly it all makes sense to you in a way that it doesn't before. And just to lead on from that, I think don't worry about things being incomplete. So just take that example of asking why. Sometimes when I'm journaling, I'll say like why, and I'll write down a bunch of reasons. So to take that question of like, I want to travel to this country. Why? I like the language. I like the food. I like the people. I don't know, whatever it is. Often I find myself they find that I've written a whole list of things, or like one or two things for why, and I still feel like it doesn't quite explain what's going on. I still feel like there's more to say, and that's fine. I won't spend ages sort of meditating over like exactly what's more I could say for that particular why. I'll often just leave it at that point. And this is the thing, like you don't have to draw everything in, you don't have to go everything in your mind in enormous detail. Big part of journaling is just getting the low-hanging fruits. You can just write something that is, just write all the stuff that is easy to write about. And in doing that, you kind of free up space in your sort of brain's database, so that next time you're journaling, you can go a little bit more obscure. Because I feel like so often when I'm writing, like there's something just on the tip of my tongue that I can't really articulate. And all the stuff that I've written down, it doesn't quite explain what's going on in my head. But I just remind myself that's fine. Like the aim is not to write down everything that I have going on in my head. It's just to get all the basics down, and then next time I can go into a bit more detail. So it's a bit like, let's say you have let's say you're cleaning up your room. That's a great example. You're cleaning up your room, and your whole room is really messy. Your desk's messy, your bed's unmade. There's clothes on the floor. It's a real mess. What do you do in that scenario? Well, I say the best thing to do is to focus on one thing at a time. So, like, clean the desk. Let's just start with that, okay. And in the process, you're almost going to make the rest of your room a bit more messy while you're just focusing on the desk. It's because, okay, let's chuck this in the bin. This stuff needs to go over there. Got some books to go over there, At that point, the rest of your room is still messy. That your bed's still unmade, the clothes are still on the floor. But you just got to focus on what's right in front of you. Just focus on cleaning up that table, and then when the table's clean, then move on to the beds, then move on to the clothes on the floor. And I feel like there's something similar there in journaling. It's like you have to, before you get into that more, there's all that more abstract stuff that you're going to want to deal with while you're journaling. But you just got to start with the stuff that you can journal really easily. And I mean, this is why journaling is so important. We're so motivated by strange things that we don't quite understand. But the process of understanding it is starting with the basics. Just okay, I don't quite know why this particular thing is the case in my life, why I think this particular way. But let's just give some guesses. Even if they're not right. That's the other thing I do. Like if I'm not sure about something, I'll just put it as a question mark. Like so, to go back to the example of like, I want to travel to this country. The architecture? Question mark. I'm not sure if architecture is the reason I want to go there or not, but it's just let's put it out there as an option, and then you start mapping out your motivation for doing something in a way that you've never really done before. And it might sound silly, like how you could say like, I knew that already, but don't underestimate the impact of just having like a big map in front of you of your motivations. And then you can sort of fine tune it. You can go, okay. Let's say, okay, the language. Why do I like the language? Do I really like the language that much? And you begin looking into these things so much more. And again, it takes constant refinement. You've got to come back to it all the time. But the cumulative effect of it over the years is enormous. And I'm just going to finish this off by talking about pros and cons. There's a pros and con tables. So everyone's seen this, right? You have to make a difficult decision. You weigh things up between pros and cons. Probably like the most well-known form of journaling that everyone does, basically. And I think I'm just gonna sort of spend a little bit of time talking about pros and cons lists specifically, because obviously you'll find yourself doing them if you're journaling. And for a while, I thought that, a bit like journaling, I thought that pros and cons lists were a bit of a waste of time, because I'd just write all my reasons down, and then I wouldn't really get anywhere with it. You know, it would be like, okay, I want to do it for this reason, I want to do it for that reason, and I still just feel as uncertain as I always had about it. But what I didn't realise is like this is again like goes back. You have to apply this process to it, where you're constantly coming back and refining and developing the pros and cons list. So it's really well mapped out and complex. So you write down a pros and cons list. That's not going to give you the answer. But what you do is fine, and then next day you come back to it and you rewrite down the pros and cons list. Maybe you'll find a few more motivations are on there than before, and then you'll just be like, okay, let's go into this. Why is this? So, for example, let's say you're weighing up, your career, and the work environment you're in. It can be quite small things that make you want to stay there. It could be the people. That's not a small thing, but it's not, the almost unrelated things. And then you can really journal into the people. What is it about which people, first of all? Okay, these people. Okay, what is it about each of these people that I like, that makes me want to stay and makes me want to stay at this job or whatever it is? It's this. And then you can sort of write down for each person. And then you just zoom out again and now that little bullet point makes a bit more sense. And, it doesn't stop there, guys. You just keep going into it again and again and again. Keep developing it. And as you continue to do this, just everything starts to make more sense. Everything just starts to break down. But it does take time to build up that sort of awareness of your motivations and why you're doing stuff. It's not an overnight thing. So anyway guys, that's what I'd kind of sort of recommend. I haven't done a lot of videos about journaling. This is the first one I've done. To be honest, I've been very nervous about doing one because it's difficult to put into words exactly what it is, and I'm still quite early on in my journey with it myself. But I hope you found something useful from it, and see you in the next one, guys.